Welcome to Planet Marzipan Podcast,
your fish and Marillion podcast,
where we talk about all things in the planet of Marillion and fish. I'm Mezza, and here's my mate,
Hey Goose.
Hello, welcome to Planet Marzipan. I'm Mezza, and here's my good friend,
Craig.
and it's one of our Planet Marzipan Meets episodes. So we are really pleased to welcome back to the podcast Tim Glasswell.
Hello.
Hi, Tim. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you?
Yeah, good. It's a lovely holiday. Thank you very much.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, well, should you put on fine form for this evening then.
Do you feel nice and tanned and relaxed?
Do I look tanned and relaxed? Relaxed, maybe.
Well, Tim's here. Firstly, as a Marillion fan, but he's here because he runs a really good website, which is called the Rainbow Room, and it's all about the Europeans and how we live. And I'll plug the URL a couple of times. So it's theeuropeans.co.uk. But we'll come back onto that very shortly, because the first question we've got to ask Tim is, how did you get into Marillion?
So, I think most people assume, because I run the Euros website, that I was around when the Euros were going, but I wasn't. So, I was born in 76, so I was a bit young for when the Euros were about. But my musical awakening happened around sort of 88, 89, which was obviously when the big changes were afoot in Marillion. Yeah. So, like a lot of bands that I got into them just as they were splitting up.
Oh, you're the kiss of death, are you? Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe not splitting up or getting back together. So my first big one was my dad took me and my brother to go see The Who at Wembley Arena when I was just gone 13. And that was like a proper musical awakening. And from then on, started playing in bands and really getting into music and trying to explore everything. My brother was a couple of years older than me, still is. And he, a few of his mates were into that kind of rock metal, Scottish heavy metal stuff. And we went on a holiday up to Norfolk, and he brought a mate along, and he showed us this band called Marillion. And I don't really remember an awful lot about it, but the only thing I do remember was that it was right by the beach, and he drew the logo on the beach. That classic Marillion scroll thing. So we were on the top of the cliff looking over, and he'd drawn the whole Marillion logo. And it was like, yeah. And that font is so classic with the music as well. The whole thing. So that was kind of how we got into it. So that would have probably been kind of late 88. The first album we bought was The Thieving Magpie on vinyl. Yeah. And I think we went halves on it, so it was a record each, I guess. And this will make you laugh, but because we were quite early to it, we didn't really know any of the history of the band at all. So we'd probably not had Misplaced Childhood yet. We had the first two albums. And when Fish was speaking in between the songs, I remember looking at my brother going, "Oh, he's Scottish." Because you're looking back on it now, and you couldn't think of anybody more Scottish.
No.
From Moira Anderson, maybe. And you just think, well, how did we not spot that? I mean, obviously the bit in the middle of Misplaced Childhood is very, very Scottish. But yeah. I often think back, you think, well, if you're listening to Thieving Magpie, does he sound Scottish? Very much so. But yes. we were surprised that he was Scottish in between. And obviously Kiss of Death, they weren't around anymore. But it was that very exciting time of summer 89 of reading in Kerrang magazine that we just started getting about what was happening. And the first Marillion item I got was Christmas in 89, which was the Season's End pitch disc.
Oh, wow.
Which I still have today and treasure. It's fantastic. And it was just the excitement of those early 89 things, seeing, everybody mentions this, don't they? Seeing Hooks in You on the chart show.
Yeah.
A clip of it. And seeing The Uninvited Guest on, late night TV and really getting into that. And that was my in to Marillion. And I've been in ever since, really. So
when was the first time that you saw them live?
So I really went for it in terms of collecting stuff. I've always been a big collector of things. But the first time I saw them was Holidays in Eden at Cambridge Corn Exchange.
Okay.
So I'd have been 15. I think it was the first gig I went to with my mates that I didn't go to with my dad. Because my dad he would always come to the gigs with us, which a lot of my mates would say, "Oh, that must be really embarrassing," but it wasn't. He was great. It was like, he was really into it as well. So
Yeah.
often he'd come to the Marillion gigs as well early on. But it was the first one we went to without him. And then Cambridge was on the list of touring venues then. So I saw them at Holidays in Eden, the Brave Tour, Afraid of Sunlight, Strange Engine, consecutive every other year.
Yeah.
At Corn Exchange, and then started branching out a bit more. The most I went to, I guess, was the Marbles tour, where I went to 3 of those, I think it was, or maybe 4. But I've always been a kind of a bit of a lurker when it comes to the Marillion stuff. I've been kind of quite quiet and never really thrown myself into the whole fandom thing. I can't even explain why, because everyone's always been very friendly and welcoming, but I've never done any of the conventions. Again, maybe it's the going abroad bits and pieces and organising it all, and life happily getting in the way. But I totted up, and I think I've seen them about 25 times, something like that.
Yeah,
so every major tour, a couple of small things like the university tour in Cambridge, which was incredible. That was at a place called the Boat Race that my band at the time used to play all the time. In fact,
was it
2 days after them? So to have seen Marillion there on the Thursday and we headlined on the Saturday,
oh wow,
was really good.
What instrument do you play, Tim?
I'm a bass guitarist.
Okay, yeah.
So we were playing a lot. Well, playing quite a few of the venues in the early 2000s. But that one, I always remember that one as well for the Boat Race, because those stripped down to, it was the Anoraktophobia, wasn't it, before it was released?
Yeah, well, pre-Anorak, wasn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And I remember Quartz being a standout one, even at those gigs.
Yeah.
But for the encore, I think, did they come on and just do Enlightened, maybe? I think it was like a little, maybe it was just Steve came on and did it. I can't quite remember. Anyway, well, no, it would have been Mark as well, because as he went up on stage, he nearly took his eye out with one of the monitors that was like,
all right.
That was high up on the stage. And then when I was playing the gig on the Saturday, he'd put a piece of tape on it saying, "Ouch, my head." So he'd obviously left a little reminder. But yeah, that's into my Marillion bit.
Okay. Well, that's great. And obviously you're still here now. Have you never been tempted to do even the Leicester conventions?
Yeah, it just never really fell right on the weekends and stuff. And then I know my uncle goes up to those quite a lot, the Leicester ones. I just never got sorted. Maybe I'm just lazy. The whole idea of getting hotel rooms and then the horror stories of the hotel rooms and all that. I just maybe I'm a fair weather organisational gig goer.
Maybe. My only advice would be don't go in a place where Andrew Barnsley Wood is staying. So for various reasons, he's not, he's picked some choice hotels in the past, and also you'll be up all night if he's there. So
yeah, choice is a very, very diplomatic term.
Yeah. Some select locations, let's say.
I think the word halls and something that rhymes with spit at the beginning.
Well, well, that's how you got into Marillion, Tim. But I was one of the people who assumed that you've been around since the beginning, which is why you started this website about the Euros. So why did you do that?
Again, I've heard a few guys on your podcast talk about this. It seems to be a seminal thing. It was the Stoke Road to Ipanema VHS.
Right.
And it's a great show, isn't it? Because it's got a bit of everything. It's got the promos on. It's got interviews at the beginning. It had half the Rocksteady gig. It had all that stuff at Stanbridge, which is great. Yeah. So that was quite exclusive. And it was that first kind of half an hour at the beginning where they're talking about how Steve joined. And there's a bit where he says, I was in a band called the Europeans and I've done some fairly nutty stuff over the years. And then he talked about How We Live as well. And that combined with my kind of record collecting addiction got into I'd quite like to find out more about them. I'd not heard any of them. I'd
No.
heard various things of saying what bands he was in before, Steve, but not actually heard any of them. So from then on, it was a case of when I go record hunting, let me go and see if I can find something by Europeans.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, probably wasn't much later, in Andy's Records in Cambridge, which I used to go to probably every weekend, flipping through, and there I found the AEIOU 12-inch by Europeans. But because it wasn't the picture that I saw in the Stoke Row video, it was like, is this the same band? So I got the guy to put it on in the record shop,
Yeah.
and he put it on really loud. And it was the 12-inch remix that he put on, which like I've said before, the 12-inch remix of AEIOU is called Alphabet Soup. It's about 8 minutes long,
Yeah.
and it's fantastic. It's really, really good. And he put it on, and we both sat there listening to it. And there's just a bit, you wouldn't hear it in the main song, but in the 12-inch bit where you hear Steve sing like on the left or right speaker, quite panned, a melody, and it was just suddenly, that is definitely Steve. This unmistakably Steve. And from then on, it was like, this is it. So that's my first one. And then before you know it, I'm starting to get all the 7-inch singles, the 12 inches. This, again, I talked it in the last podcast as well, is that kind of the amazing days of record collecting in the 90s when it was less of the YouTube generation and Spotify just being able to press a button and hear whatever B-side or unreleased thing there was. Back then, it was searching out stuff at record fairs for 12 inches or bootlegs and things. And I do miss that. I've lost my train of thought there. What was it?
So your first thing you got was the AEIOU 12-inch.
Yes, and so it was looking in record shops for them. You used to be able to write off to people that would find records for you. So you could have record finding services. In the back of Record Collector was always a good one. But you could write to somebody that would say, send me your want lists. And you could say, can you find me something by Europeans? And they'd write back and say, I found this for £10. Send me the money and I'll buy it for you. Which just seems really old fashioned. But yeah, I got a lot of stuff through that way. And so it was just building up a fairly sizable collection back then of just the vinyl. And then I'd been to university and then went and had a year off around Australia as a treat for finishing university. And then when I got back, I just thought, wouldn't it be nice to share this? Because it was the early days of the internet. I think it was even pre the Marillion.com website. So I think they had maybe been Marillion.net or something, but it was pre the .com.
So this was the BT internet site.
This was, yes. So I started off just under my my parents' BT account. Someone the other day saw that my email address was still BT Internet, and they thought that was cute.
Yeah, I mean, when we first had our first business website back in the Kiki Empire, it was like a BT Internet site, but long before we actually had our proper designerkey.co.uk kind of URL. It was back in those days. So yeah, definitely going back to pre-2000.
Yeah, so that was 98. And I set that up. So it's, you think that's 27 years old. And I built it with a friend of mine called Will, who was pretty good on web building and stuff. And he kind of showed me the ropes, how to scan stuff and put it up. And I know it just sounds cheesy, but it really just rolled from there. And there's just, certainly in the peak time in the sort of mid 2000s, it was just, I'd be getting emails every week. So it was just, for me, it was a place to share all the stuff that I got. So people could see this, because they're looking around on the net. There wasn't a massive amount of European stuff there.
There still isn't.
No, there's no.
I've been searching. Obviously, I've had a bit of a deep, or maybe not obviously, I've had another bit of a deep dive over the weekend into Euro stuff. What an incredible live band they were. That's the first thing.
Yes.
Just energetic, edgy, but tight as anything. Incredible. Yeah. But I mean, you've got some, this was around the time of you setting the site up, then you've got some exclusive interviews on there with all 4 members of the band, haven't you?
So that was quite early on. I mean, the first one I got was with John Otway, that the Europeans had appeared on one of his albums called All Balls,
Oh,
No Willie,
yeah,
which is a great title.
yeah.
And that's really funny because they really are just the backing band on it.
Yeah.
They're not. They're players for hire, really. But you can still tell it's them because they're a really tight band, and you can hear the vocals in there. So I'd managed to get this little interview with John Otway, and that alone had made my day. It was like, because I used to go see Otway in Bridge places years ago, and I haven't seen him for years actually, but he's always good fun. And I'm trying to think who came first. It might have been Steve actually.
I'm looking at your dates on the site. Yeah, it probably was Steve in June, Colin in July, Jeff in August, and then Ferg the following year.
Yeah, so it all happened pretty quickly. So everything was there, and Steve must have stumbled across it. And I remember getting an email saying, "You've got a vibey little site there." And I thought, "Well, thank you." And he said, "If you ever want to do an interview, just let me know." And it was like, wow. One minute I'm just collecting a few bits and pieces, and next minute I'm trying to think of some questions for the singer of my favourite band. It was crazy. 2 of my favourite bands, 3 of my favourite bands. So yeah, I just sent them off, and he was very gracious to send them back. I think you'd think nowadays nobody would type up their responses. They'd want to do a podcast
do
or a
this.
Zoom interview, and then let you do the transcribing later.
Absolutely, yeah.
So to have actually filled it out and been quite thorough with a lot of those things back in the day was great. I think he then must have tipped off Colin, who again said, what do you want to know? So I tried to frame some more questions that I hadn't asked Steve. Jeff was next. 3 out of 4, I presume, I think he'd said. And then Jeff and Ferg are still very good friends. So later he put me in touch with him, and I went round to do Ferg's one at his house.
Oh, did you?
That was, what year? Have you got it there? What year was
2000, that? November 2000, yeah.
And I think I split that into 2 because it was quite long. But he dug a few bits and pieces out from the back of his cupboard. He found some great old photos that I'd not seen before, and just various bits and pieces. I think most of it he thrown to Jeff over the years, but those were really exciting to get those on there, and it just made the website that little bit more exclusive with just bringing it all together a bit more.
And then there's other things on here. There's obviously there's song clips, there's video clips. There's a quite a detailed gigography as well.
That's the one I love doing the most, and I still research doing that all the time because I started that from scratch basically. So there was nowhere listed. This is years and years before setlist.com. Or .fm, isn't it? So I started putting that together just from what I knew, from little clippings, from stickers on the front of records, from dates in videos. And out of all of them, that's the biggest page. And that's the one I just love going through it and finding the date, finding out who the support was, getting some photos. If a fan had sent me some photos, I took some photos at this gig. Would you like them? The clippings, the reviews. Occasionally someone had done a bootleg recording of it. So there's a very early date at the Marquee in, was it June 1980? August 81.
August 81,
that somebody had sent me, which was incredible, really unique stuff. So the gigography is one I still look at now. So there's a great page on Twitter that I follow, which is Old Editions of NME.
Right.
And every week they'll put up various articles from within it, but also the gig pages in the back. Those full page, what was it?
Yeah.
A5 basically, isn't it? Really big with all, who was on at Dingwall's, Rock Garden, Greyhound, Fulham Palace, all that kind of thing. And even now, I'll look through those and I still find stuff where it's got the Europeans on it that I didn't have before. So I'm still screenshotting that. And that's one that I still update fairly regularly because I've got more stuff to go through. But I because I don't update it all that often, when I go back on it, I'm surprised at how much stuff I put on it.
Yeah, like you said, there's lots of little adverts or tickets or
Press photos and press
Press
clippings,
photos, yeah,
adverts, yeah.
or quotes or reviews. As you say, there's a copy of the bootleg cassette, um, some photos. It's a real treasure trove. It is, Tim.
And most of that is people just were offering it to me, sending it to me. Oh, I love that band. It's great to have a presence for them on the web. I've got something here. Can I send it to you? Yeah, send it on. Send me a copy.
And I take it, yeah, you're still up for any more submissions because anybody who's listening who've got anything.
Exactly. Have a look on the website anyway. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on there, but I'm still finding new stuff. If you were at any of those gigs that I haven't got anything for, or I haven't got stuff for them, then please, yeah, send it through. It's always good to hear. I don't hear from as many viewers as I used to. But yeah, back in the day, it was probably one a week. So, but some of them were so really fortuitous. So there's a guy that worked at the BBC that said, "Have you ever managed to get a copy of the full BBC Sight and Sound from Chippenham in February '84?" So it was, it was on TV and it was recorded and it was a live simulcast thing with Radio 1.
Yeah.
And I said, "No, I've just got like the broadcast thing." And then like 5 years later, he said, "Oh, I've nipped into the archive and managed to get someone to run me off a copy." Wow. So I've got the full broadcast copy of that with a couple of warm-up tracks before, a couple of extra tracks on the end, all the warm-up stuff as well, the encores and in between songs, and so that's brilliant. And then some of the kind of bigger players in the game as well I've interviewed or spoken to. So there was a guy I got in touch called Nick Atkins, who used to live with them down in London when they first moved down, and he was their sound engineer early on. And I can't remember how I got in touch with him. Again, maybe he just got in touch and said, "I've got some stuff you might be interested in." And that turned into him turning up to the studio I had up at the time with a box full of reels and cassettes. And we basically in real time just went through them all and transferred them all to digital, including really early demos and live stuff. And that was fascinating. So that was a good 2 CDs worth of stuff just from him. And then there's the producers, David Lord, I met up with in Bath a few years back. Various fans, including Inga in Holland, who had sent me a lot of stuff that I'd met at the Camden Dingwall's H-band gigs years ago. So yeah, I'm still amazed at how much stuff there is, and I love doing it. I wish I'd put more time into it, because I've still probably got a backlog of things. There's stuff on there where I've said, "Coming soon." I was going to do like a page all about the equipment, and then a page all about the studio sessions where they recorded what, which I've all got to hand somewhere. I've just not got round to doing it. But they've probably been coming soon for 5 or 10 years.
They're still coming soon, aren't they?
Well, this is true. Yeah. It's just a bit further away.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's quite difficult to get the music at the moment, isn't it? Because nothing's available to buy
legally legit. Yeah,
legally.
Apart from a kind of Discogs at eBay or anywhere like that. Maybe.
It's a real shame, isn't it? Like I said before about it being the generation of at a touch of a button. Sadly, none of it is at the touch of a button. And you think of how many things have been reissued over the years. I would like to think probably most mainstream rock stuff that was available on vinyl at the time, and I'm calling Europeans mainstream because they didn't chart particularly highly, but they were a presence in the 80s.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
They were known in the 80s. And a lot of people say, they were real kick-in live band. They just couldn't really convert that into...
I think that's it. The impression I get is that they were so good live, they never quite captured that on record, although the live record is really good.
Yes. So even from very early on, it was can we get a campaign to get these released? So, back then it was, can we get it onto CD?
Yeah.
And now it's probably, can we get it onto streaming? So, but I did a page all about, what the possibilities were of getting them released. This was 20 odd years ago. And there was a quote from Steve from years ago saying, Yeah, we'll try and get the Euros stuff out sometime, but the How We Live one will never see the light of day. And then a few years later, the Dry Land one came out, and then the Europeans have just gone to sleep, haven't they? So,
Well, Recurring Dreams came out, didn't it?
It did, yes. So that came out in 2005.
Yeah.
Was that a Racket release, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Yeah, well, it was on Intact. So it was.
Yeah,
like
I mean, it's effectively Racket.
Yeah, so it's effectively Racket. So they did that, but it was a fairly limited pressing, and that goes for silly money now as well. It's ridiculous. So it's if that's one down or two down with How We Live, then it's the vocabulary and live. But whenever I've spoken to Lucy over the years and kind of just nagged her and said, why aren't these out? And I just get the impression every time they try, they just hit the wall or a different wall. Because A&M basically went under in 84. It was then transferred to various other people and then other people. It's a case of finding the trail, the music trail of who
is it Phonogram there that took them on? I don't know now.
I don't know. So right from the off, people have been like, where can I get these? And all I've really been able to say is, you just got to get the vinyl.
Yeah.
But there's lots of little bits and pieces all over the place that, you'd end up like me and you'd have hundreds of Europeans vinyls.
We know a little bit about the Euros from your site, but for folks who don't really know about the Europeans and the history, could you give us a potted version of that? I realise what I'm asking you here.
I will try off the top of my head. Yes. So, Jeff, Ferg, and Colin were school friends up in Glasgow, and they got together and were playing in bands since they were 13. And they'd been in a band called Scotch in the late 70s that had records pressed on a label called Coma. And they were kind of teeny bopper type, Bay City Rollers type stuff.
Oh, right.
Okay. The records were anyway, whereas I think, they were probably a bit more rocky in terms of what they did live. But they were just, from the ages of 13, they were a band, and they were called, I'm trying to think what they were called at first. I know they were Motion Pictures at first.
Yeah.
But so they were Scotch, then they were Motion Pictures. They may have changed the name to the Pictures as well. There was another band called Pictures, which makes researching that a bit trickier. And they'd done various gigs up and down the country and not really got anywhere. This is like turn of the 70s into the 80s. And then they decided just to come down to London, and where the streets are paved with gold, and come and make their living there. So, and then I think fairly similar to how Steve has described it, when his band at the same time, Harlow, had come down to London. As soon as they came down to London, one of the guys quit.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, what are we going to do now? So the keyboard player from Motion Pictures, Alan Dalgleish, had quit. Simultaneously, Steve Hogarth was looking for another band around summer of 1980. They'd put an advert in Melody Maker looking for a keyboard player, singer, player of gloves, that kind of thing. And he answered the ad, and by all accounts, it was instant. They all got on really well, and just carried on doing that gigging, but just with a renewed energy. They did keep a couple of the old Motion Picture songs, but Steve brought with him a few songs that he'd done in his bands before. So there was Joining Dots that was on the live album, was a Harlow number, and Tunnel Vision.
Yeah.
They're quite unmistakably fast, punky Steve songs, very much his songs, which they integrated into the set very early on. So we were talking about that cassette of the Marquee gig. That was 3 months after he joined, and even then they were pretty tight and just getting on with it. And then they were just gigging all around London, looking for that elusive record deal. They were getting reviews in the press, unsigned, basically saying, well, when are people going to sign these guys? Mm-hmm. And what happened apparently was Jeff and Ferg went into A&M Records, dressed somewhat weirdly for the 80s, with a demo tape, and said, we want to come and speak to the head of A&R, which was a guy called Wally Brill. And he was lucky enough just to catch their attention, and he played in the cassette, and they pretty much signed him there and then.
Wow.
That's how I believe that went down.
Yeah.
So they were signed to A&M for 3 albums. They recorded their first one, Vocabulary, in 82, 83, with Vic Coppersmith Heaven, who did some of the Jam stuff. And they delivered that. And I don't know whether the record company were not quite that pleased with it, or they weren't as pleased with it, but they ended up re-recording a couple of the songs with David Lord down at Crescent Studios in Bath, which they worked with quite a lot afterwards. So the Vocabulary album came out. The biggest thing was they had a single called The Animal Song. So that was their first single. And it's
quite distinctive track, isn't it?
It is very. It's got yodeling in it.
It has, yeah.
You say that and you think it sounds terrible, but some of it is. But most of it's very fast, quirky, punky, weird, yodely. But it's really that kind of new agey.
Well, I watched the whistle test clip this afternoon, and as well as that yodeling, they're making animal noises on the stage, and they're all wearing white masks. It's very strange.
It is very strange.
Yeah, that's the bit that there's a quick video clip of it, isn't there, on the Stoke Road to Ipanema? No audio of the song, but a quick clip of, is it H getting paint or something poured
It's got
over?
some liquid poured over. That was food, isn't it? Because there's
food colour in the middle.
It's been a while since I've seen it.
But that was a big hit in America.
Was it?
Not hit as in up the charts, but on the independent radio stations.
Right. So college radio.
College radio, all that kind of thing. So you look that up online, you get a lot of Americans going, oh, that was the soundtrack to my youth, and they used to play it in all the clubs. And so that was a big record there. Again, it didn't really then translate into sales. And they only ever went to America for a week, the Europeans, in 83, and that wasn't a particularly good week by all accounts. But yeah, they released a Vocabulary album. It didn't chart, but all the while they seemed to be getting Radio 1 in concert things. They had 2 of them. They got a Sight and Sound, they got the Tube. So they're getting quite big gigs and quite big TV gigs, but that wasn't translating into record sales, which must have been so demoralizing.
Presumably those things were paid for back in those days, weren't they? So presumably that's a record company getting them into those positions.
I'd imagine so, yeah.
A lot of backhanders.
Yeah. So Vocabulary didn't do all that well, but they were still really proud of those songs that were on it. And I think they were maybe slightly burnt by overproducing the record in various studios. But they thought, well, why don't we just do a quick live album, recoup a bit of money, but also just show people that we can do it live without all the overdubs, that it really is just, the 4 of us playing. And that live album, by all accounts, it doesn't have any overdubs on it at all. That really is them playing live.
It's really good. It's really, really good, is the live album. But there's a lot. It's like about 25, 26 minutes aside on vinyl.
Yes.
Isn't it? So it's probably not the best sounding record you've ever heard, but it's got some real energy to it. It's brilliant.
So they made some progress. It charted at number 100 for a week. Okay. So it's about the bare minimum you could get to say that you were a charting band. But, a lot of those things were, the Tube and the Sight and Sound were around then to be able to flog it. And also it was on at a cheap price.
I was going to say, much like Reel to Reel, it was a bargain price, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was done as one of those ones, let's knock this out as an interim thing, cheap price, make a bit of money, but also get us out there.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think it really worked. So, but they carried on doing more gigs, big gigs, and then recorded the 3rd album, or the 2nd studio album, Recurring Dreams, in summer of 84, which I think is their best work. I mean, in many ways, it's a million miles from Vocabulary.
It is, yeah, yeah.
It's unmistakably the same band, but if I think Steve sang one of the songs on Vocabulary, whereas, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he sings 5 out of the 8 on Recurring Dreams, and it's a lot more. I don't want to say rocky and proggy, but it's certainly
just
more,
more accomplished, isn't it? It's you know,
it's certainly more Marillion-y.
Yes.
Or the more of the Steve that we recognise from Marillion. But again, the tracks on it are great, and there's most of the ones Steve sings are the ones that he wrote. But then you've got something like Hometown on there, which was written by Ferg and Jeff, which is brilliant. And the first track as well, 1001 Arguments, the rhythm and along with You Don't Want Me in Your Life, how tight the rhythm section is, and we talked about it on the How We Live pod as well. I think Colin Moore's just he's just so good at what he does that you kind of forget how good he is. It's just, you could tell that they'd been playing together since they were 13.
Yes.
And this is again coming into the, can we get some stuff out there or reissued? There's some amazing stuff of the outro of that You Don't Want Me in Your Life. It goes on for another 2 or 3 minutes after the record, of which is as good as the rest of the song, with them just playing off each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's got to be released somewhere along the line.
And the last track on Recurring Dreams is Acid Rain, which obviously H has resurrected for his natural shows now, hasn't
yes. It was on the Rome. Was it on the Rome DVD Blu-ray recently?
Yeah, it's on the Rome Blu-ray.
Yeah. And yeah, he's done quite a few of them over the years, hasn't he? With those. But Recurring Dreams, again, it never got the audience at the time. Again, you'll find people online saying it was the soundtrack of my college summer, but by all accounts, it slipped out. The record company started going at the head of promotions, and the head of the record company, Derek Green, was sacked like the week before it came out, so it never got any kind of promotion. I was going to say
that whoever designed the 2 studio album covers wants shooting. That's shocking.
They could have done a lot better.
Yeah.
And all the while, they embarked on the biggest tour they'd done around Europe. And they were turning up to places, and the people had not got the record, so they didn't know what they were playing. And it was like Play Animal Song and Falling and AEIOU.
Yeah.
So it was tricky times, and having done 2 studio albums, it was like, well, what should we do now? And as we kind of talked about on the How We Live pod the other week, the band kind of separated into 2 camps, with Colin and Steve going off and writing things like Dry Land and Games in Germany together, whilst Jeff and Ferg wrote some of their own stuff, a lot of stuff, and a lot of really good stuff. But
has that ever seen the light of day?
None of it.
No,
not at all. Apart from the stuff that was then later in How We Live.
Sorry, we did touch. Sorry to ask you to interrupt you. We did touch on the How We Live pod about Euros versions of some of the How We Live songs. Are they around?
Not officially, no.
No, but you've heard demos of them.
Oh yeah. It's just crying out for bonus discs that I've already curated in my head. But yes, they were basically at the end of their 3-album contract. Nobody really wanted to sign them. Mark Thompson, the manager, was touting them around as the next big thing, which he'd probably been doing for the last 3 years, and it hadn't really worked. And cut a long story short, basically, Steve was offered a deal. Nobody wanted the band, but Steve was offered, saying we're quite interested in him as a solo singer. To which Steve said, well, can I bring Colin along, because I've been working some stuff with him. And that's where How We Live came in. And I think we probably covered most of that last time.
I think we did last time. That's brilliant, Tim. Thank you for that, because you've covered about 4 or 5 years there, haven't you? Yes. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot like that.
That's right. No, I was surprised how much I remembered.
But like I did before we started recording, I blame Craig for that.
Yeah, it's all my fault.
It was his suggestion. So from the Euro stuff, what particular favourites have you got?
I think because it was that first one I ever heard, I've always loved AEIOU. And there's still bits in it that I didn't know at the time. That there's a great line in it. I don't know if you can probably find it on YouTube. Most people, if they can't find it anywhere else, there's a backing vocal in it where they were obviously trying vocal sounds to try and imitate the yodeling, but maybe not being quite so in your face. And they'd obviously got some sounds that they wanted to do, and they were trying to verbalize what these words were, and they ended up singing "Fish Bar Restaurant." So unless you actually knew that's what they were singing, and it's actually on the vocabulary sleeve on the inner, they've actually written "Fish Bar Restaurant" as like a little sketch somewhere along the side. And when you hear them singing it, it sounds like they're just vocalizing just sounds, but they're actually singing "Fish Bar Restaurant," which is what they could see out the window in Willesden Green where they were doing it.
Okay.
So yeah, AEIO has always been a great one. I always love "Don't Give Your Heart to Anyone" on Recurring Dreams. That kind of tribal rhythm out in the middle bit out to the end. I think that's great. I like a lot of music. I go in through phases where I probably won't listen to it for years, just because I'd probably overdo it, and maybe it's just the way I consume music. But I tend to have set groups that I really love and binge. So I could, nowadays it's probably more on Spotify, even though we've all got CDs around us, that probably do a lot of it on Spotify. And I tend to binge a lot of it in one go, and then probably won't touch it for another couple of years or so.
Yeah.
And then you come back to it with fresh ears, don't you? And you're like, this is amazing again. I can't believe I'd not liked that song before, or maybe the one I really did love, I did listen to too many times.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you on that. I tend to, if a band or an artist is bringing a new record out, it tends to put me into a bit of a deep dive into their old stuff as well.
Yes.
But like you say, I mean, apart from the podcast, I say this quietly, I don't play Marillion very often at home at the moment.
Shh, don't give the game away.
Well, because we've talked about it a number of times on here, haven't we? We'll do an episode. We did Fellini Days a few weeks ago. There's no way I've pulled Fellini Days out the rack for years.
Yes.
It doesn't mean I don't like it, but it's just I've never felt like going to listen to it, and then you have to for this, and it's good because you rediscover it. You hear it with fresh ears.
So I love that. I love that bit where I probably have a couple of years where I don't listen to it, and then I re-listened to the How We Live for the pod the other week, and I hadn't listened to that as much for a long time, and you forget how good that is.
Yeah.
So to me, I quite like that as a way of doing music, because otherwise you just end up listening to the same stuff and getting bored, and it just mixes it up a bit. So
and of the stuff that you've obviously heard, because you've got stuff from the guys and from various places, so of the stuff that hasn't been released, what would be your 2 tracks to die for that you'd want on this fabulous box set that we're going to assemble?
Well, I was lucky enough in the 2000s to run Jeff Dugmore's website. So again, it's the time when websites were just coming in, and I'd met him at a few gigs here and there. He'd given us backstage passes to come and see him, and he's always really friendly and encouraging, and just loved the site and stuff, which was always really nice to hear, considering I just set it up as a fan.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Would you consider doing a website for me?" So I did, and I said on 3 conditions. One, I'd like a bit of money. I mean, I got a bit of money that wasn't by any means what a web developer would have got in the 2000s.
Yeah.
But it was nice. One was I asked him if he could do me a favor for my band that I was in at the time, which never really materialized, but for various reasons. But the third one was said, could I have access to your cassette archives? Can I hear some of this unreleased stuff? Because those interviews with the 4 guys, they'd all written, there's loads of stuff that hasn't been released. So I went round his house probably 20 odd years ago, and came away with a shoebox full of cassettes and digitized them all. And those were like the original just demos of them recording with a little Walkman in the corner of a room, the rehearsals, some of the early motion picture stuff, the early demos that they did with that. But also a lot of the studio stuff later that is a lot more polished. And then some of the ones that you actually recognize a bit more. So some of those later How We Live tracks. And again, we talked about this on the How We Live thing. The scope for how much stuff could be included in an exhaustive Euros box set is just incredible. So there's at least enough for another album per studio album of unreleased tracks.
Wow.
All in really good quality as well. So some of them are proper studio recordings. There weren't that many actual outtakes from the albums. There's a few alternate versions of songs from the vocabulary. So there was a couple that Vic Coppersmith Heaven had recorded that David Lord redid. So there's versions of American People and Falling and the original Recognition that were from those sessions. There weren't actually many full song outtakes or any full song outtakes from Recurring Dreams, but I've got a few extended versions or like just run throughs, and there's that 1001 Arguments. I've got a bit where they just jammed it out for another 5 minutes at the end, which is brilliant. And I think those things would be really great on a reissue, because again, it just shows how great that band were. And then more recently, was lucky enough to get access to Steve's archive at Marillion via James Levy. And again, there was another 4 or 5, just lots and lots of stuff that I'd not heard before.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of in the position where I've got various things I've collected over the years, plus all Jeff's stuff and all Steve's stuff. So I can see everything that's there. And I think Steve's stuff, there was maybe like 12 tracks from a third album that you could put together that were in releasable quality. They're demos, but they sound like proper studio recordings. Yeah. So the one that's really good is there's a track called Emotional Warfare, which is one of the last things they did in a proper studio in early 1985, was kind of a last-ditched attempt to salvage a record deal. And it's actually a Ferg and Jeff song that Steve sang. But
that's quite unusual, isn't it, really?
Yeah. I don't know if
Ferg tended to sing the songs that they'd written.
Yeah, which is maybe that's why it makes it good. I don't know. It just sort of sings it in his style, but that's got to get released somehow. Most of it's all digitized already. It's probably a case of just a bit of topping and tailing and cleaning it up and getting it out there, really. But the very least, the original albums need to get out there.
Yeah.
I mean, that'll be the first stepping stone. But let's just hope that does happen sooner rather than later. I've been talking about it for 30 years.
Yeah, if Claude was on here now, he'd be demanding a super deluxe edition already, wouldn't he?
Well, yeah. I mean, when Tim said about the bonus discs, I had Mikey in mind, because Mikey always likes another two discs to whatever comes out.
I'm a sucker for box sets and stuff, and most of the stuff I buy now tends to be the box sets. And I've got the new. I'm a big fan of the Who, so I've got the new Who Are You one this week, and it's 8 discs.
Yeah. Of
which 7 have got basically unreleased stuff on, and I'm actually playing it on CD as well, not just doing it on Spotify.
I mean, it's going to be interesting to see the deluxe edition of H's Ice Cream Genius album, which is out in 26, because I think that might spur record labels on to possibly have a bit of interest if it does even marginally well.
Yeah, I'd hope so. It just needs that breakthrough, doesn't it? Because it's not like they haven't been trying to get them out.
No.
I just think they're unlucky with what walls they hit. But no, that's
if not Racket, do we take some positivity about the fact that Esoteric re-released the How We Live album? So they must have some sort of an in with whoever holds the rights.
And there are various labels that are unique at doing those kind of reissues, aren't they? Particularly the 80s stuff.
Yeah, well, Esoteric do some great stuff. They've done all
Yeah,
the Bebop Deluxe. They've started the Bill Nelson ones, and they're similar sort of boxes to the Who one you're talking about.
yeah,
Stephen W. Taylor's doing the surround mixes. They sound great.
yeah. And with all the memorabilia that I've collected, you do amazing booklets and stuff. I was chatting with Mark McCormack from the Marillion Museum because he
Yes.
was kind of, I can't remember if it was him that had started it or it was me, saying about maybe putting like a book together of some of his collection. Um, I can't quite remember how it started really, but it made me just think, as a place to share, the website 27 years ago was the place to do it.
Hmm.
But in terms of just putting together a really nice 12-inch style hardback book of all the memorabilia of all would be great to do. It would have a limited market, but you'd think it would be enough for it to cover its costs. But then there's always that worry about the legality of it and how that works in terms of copyright. So there was
Yeah.
that thing a few years ago, wasn't there, where a guy had done the book about the fish
Yes.
things that he ended up
Yes.
pulping, didn't he? Because for various reasons.
Well, legally, he didn't have to pulp it. He just
Okay.
did it as a courtesy to Fish, because that range of books covers everybody and their granny, and there's only, I think, the Fish one that's caused issue. Everybody else has been quite okay with what he's done. I mean, yes, it did take articles, and yes, it did take bits from blogs and stuff like that. But a lot of them do stuff like that, and yeah, I think just Fish took it a bit too personally on that.
Okay. Yeah,
Sorry to disappear. I have got a copy of that, thanks to
okay.
Gordy, but I can't put my hand on it right
I
now.
just wondered about the legalities of whether somebody from who owned A&M stuff over the years might go, no, you can't do that. But I think if it's a small like private pressing that you'd probably be selling. Let's face it, I'd be selling it to Marillion fans.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then I thought I'd love to do something like that. I've done a few for my own bands and stuff as well, and they're not really expensive to produce. So I'd quite like to maybe do something like that. But if that could go hand in hand with a box set or something, then I'd love to get involved with something like that and helping write liner notes and stuff like that. Because I pore over those things and these
Yeah.
box sets and stuff.
Well, I mean, the stuff that you've got on the website is brilliant, and obviously that would take that to another level, wouldn't it?
Yes.
But also the
Um,
fact of the matter is interviews wise, I mean, it's been a while since you did the last lot of interviews, so it may be worth reconnecting with the band and see how their opinions on things might have
Yeah.
actually changed in the last 20 years or so.
Again, it's one of those life gets in the way things. I think I've probably been in touch with most of them over the last couple of years, and it's all right, oh, let's meet up and do this, and that shoebox of demos from Jeff that I got 20 years ago, still upstairs. I've not seen him to give him back. So
yeah.
I'm sure it was
Yeah.
the end of last year. It was like, can we sort out a time for me to come and do this? He goes, yeah, come over and we'll have a chat and do a new interview for the site, and we'll get Ferg over as well.
There's always the possibility of doing podcast episodes or something, but
Well, there's that too.
I mean, do you think they would ever get back together for a gig or two? Is that too much to ask?
I don't think they will. I think the time has passed. I think Steve talked about this on one of the Corona Diaries recently,
You did, yeah.
because they did a couple of Euros episodes, which were great. I mean, a lot of it is dependent on how much time Steve can get off from the Marillion stuff, because obviously that's quite a slog. If ever there was a time to do it, it was probably the last 6 months to a year, where I got the impression he was kind of sat around looking for things to do.
Well, does Ferg still play?
No, he doesn't.
Right, okay.
He hasn't played for ages. But when I saw him 20 odd years ago and asked him, and I think Steve had corroborated this, was that Steve was the one who said, Fergus was the one who'd said, I don't fancy it. If we were to do something new, if I'm going to have to put my life on hold, because he was working on British Airways as a steward, if I'm going to put my life on hold to do this music thing again, I'm not expecting it to go really big, but I'd rather do something new as well as maybe the old stuff.
Yeah.
And as Steve had said, that's suddenly a next bigger step, isn't it? writing and recording stuff is very different to let's have a quick rehearsal, bash some stuff out, and do a gig at Dingwalls.
Yeah.
But when I see everybody, when I go do these new interviews that I shall do, I will raise that again. But no, because I never got to see them play. I'd love to. I mean, I saw that Dingwalls H thing where Colin got up to play with Steve. That was quite special.
That was great. Yeah.
We were there.
And there was very nearly a time where Jeff was going to play with the H band.
Oh, was it?
There was a gig. I think it might have been the Feast of Hope thing that Fish did with him. Yeah. Jeff was going to come and do standing in on drums for a bit, but that never quite happened or worked out. So I get the impression they chat and they're on WhatsApp groups like most bands are, I'd imagine. But no, my gut instinct is that they probably won't. I'd love if they could, and I'd be the first one at the front of those barriers watching, and yodeling.
Yes, definitely, yes. Just to tie this back to Marillion, then, Tim, what's your favourite Marillion album?
I'd not thought about that.
Sorry, put you on the spot again.
My favourite. Shall I have a quick look? Probably because it was the first one. I still have a love for Season's End. Yeah. That's probably my go-to if I'm thinking I'm going to stick some Marillion on. And I know there are bits on it that are dated, and I know the band still say Space is overworked guff and all that, but I love it. I just really love it. I could go through each of them and tell you how they're special. Marbles was a big one at the time.
Yeah.
That was probably in my mid-20s and a bit more disposable income, so I went to see more of the gigs and really got into that. And the campaign for that was great as well, wasn't it? The real build-up to it. And I was...
Top 10 single and all that.
Yeah, lucky to be at that Aylesbury show as well. And the week that they got the number 7, I was there as well. And that was great to be at. So Marbles, these are the kind of classic ones, aren't they? Season's End, Marbles. I really loved Fear.
Okay.
Not so much Hour Before It's Dark. I felt that was Fear Part 2. But I really liked all of Fear. I think that was really good. And you know, when you watch those documentaries, don't you? Oh, it's the best album we've ever done. Or I'm putting it up there with Misplaced and Brave and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I really do think that was real. And it's so well recorded and sounds great. And so, yeah, those probably my top 3. But there's easily a track on every album that I love.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I could. Yeah.
And in a similar vein, then, I think you know this because we talked about this before the podcast recording. Have you got a particular gig that is your favourite?
I was lucky to be at the Albert Hall, the first Albert Hall one. It was one that my mate had got us tickets for as well. So that whole thing, you've got the tickets, haven't you? Have you got the tickets? Did I book this? So he had, and we were fairly close on the right-hand side there. And you know, the DVD Blu-ray of it is as great as the gig was.
Yeah.
Apart from maybe having to cut out all the standing ovations between every song. Because it did go on a bit, didn't it?
We were so proud that our band was there, weren't we? You know.
Oh, and it was packed. They looked like they're having a great time. I know you read, you know, that they were really nervous because it was the biggest gig of their career in their minds, and they didn't want to cock it up, and the cameras were there to film it and everything. But I quite often go back to that and watch that one as one of the. I've got all the Blu-rays, but that's the only one I ever go back and really watch a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was great. All those early Corn Exchange ones as well are special. First time we ever saw them at Cambridge in '91. Yeah, I don't think I've been to a bad gig. I've been to quite a few of the H band gigs as well. A few of them are interesting. Where
they are, yeah. You didn't do the Sheffield one, did you? At the Hubs?
No.
That was interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I did one at the Astoria 2.
Yeah, downstairs, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think Steve wasn't quite Steve that night.
I think one of my favourite ones was actually the Union Chapel. The H band gig at Union Chapel was really good.
Yeah, I was there as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Dingwalls obviously for the Live Body Live Spirit was really
Yeah,
good.
they were good, weren't they? And
They were great.
they did it 3 years in a row, I think, didn't they? The Dingwalls one. They did another one the year after.
Yeah, I remember going to a few at Dingwalls. Yeah,
Yeah. And I've done a few of the H Natural shows. I was at that Bush Hall one, the first one. Was that one
All
of the
right,
first
yeah,
ones?
yeah.
And a really small one in a pub up in Oxford somewhere as part of the Oxjam festival thing. I was working down in Southampton at the time and thought I'll just drive up there for the night. And it was basically in a little pub, just watching him play like a metre away. I think he did a couple of Euros ones as well, so that was good.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. Okay. Well, Tim, thank you very much for coming on the podcast again, because you joined us for the How We Live one. Your website, I can't recommend it highly enough. It's a great resource.
you'll lose yourself for an hour or two when you're on there.
Yeah,
I lose
definitely.
myself in it, honestly. I forget how much is on it.
Well, it's theeuropeans.co.uk. And actually, I wanted to ask you one final question about the Europeans. Is it the Europeans or is it Europeans?
Well, theoretically, it's just Europeans, but I think so many people put a definite article in it that it was interchangeable. But on all the album sleeve, it's just Europeans.
Okay.
But
Bit like Pet Shop Boys, isn't it?
yeah,
It sticks the
which
in
I
front.
always call the Pet Shop Boys. I get told
I
that.
think I would hazard a guess that most of the gig adverts would put a the in front of it. But it has made kind of researching a bit tricky sometimes because you search for Europeans and all sorts of things come up. So
Yes, yeah.
so yes, just Europeans. We'll go with that.
Okay. Well, that's a great place to draw to a close. Thank you very much, Tim, for joining us this evening.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to Craig.
I've not done much. I've been a good boy.
Well, your work starts now, doesn't it? All that remains to be said is good night from me.
And it's good night from him.
Take care.
And stay alive. Hey! Thanks for listening to Planet Marzipan Podcast. Please like and subscribe from whichever platform you get your podcasts from. You can contact us at planetmarzipanpodcast@gmail.com and check out marillion.com, fishmusic.scot,